Hello again, High Railers. We're a little late with this episode, but we'll do our best to get it in under the wire as we explore the wonderful world of electric trains that are models of electric trains. And in tonight's viewer mail, Mrs. Modine Parkenfarker of East Liverpool, Ohio writes and asks if the portrait hanging over the layout is of me. No, it's a beloved family pet, Zoe, who lived with us for many, many years, and she just happens to resemble my COVID haircut, which has not been a haircut since February. First, let's take a look at the Bachmann Metroliner. The Bachmann Metroliner was introduced in 1969 before Amtrak, and so it was available in the Penn Central paint scheme only, and it came delivered in this handsome jewel box, which it's the original Bachmann clamshell, which, as you can see, is really easy to open. And of course, the other feature of this box was the model is actually screwed to the box, so it doesn't fall out, but it also makes it kind of a big waste of time to store it and put it back and keep everything in place. So I keep mine in a different box, but I'm hanging on to the clamshells because they are kind of cool. And once released from its bondage, you can take a look at one of the features of the earliest runs. Is the pantograph is a one-piece casting. It flexed a little bit, but it didn't fold all the way down, so all four of your cars would be running with the pens up, and also, again, another challenge to storing the car damage-free. You can still find these available on the secondhand market. They are out there, but this would be from the original runs in about 1969. After 1971 and the advent of Amtrak, they introduced the second generation of this model, which includes a flexible pantograph that you can actually raise and lower. Still not capable of collecting current, but looked a little better, and kind of a neat paint scheme too, with the red, white, and blue on the front. First generation Phase 1 Amtrak paint scheme. And as long as I have the shell off, one of the things that I've been able to do with the old Metroliners is add some interior lighting. Rapido Easy Peasy lighting kit just goes right in with some double-face sticky tape. One thing I did was I added some white label stickers to the floor, which helps reflect the light. I'll show you the lit up cars here in a minute. Still working out how to get light in the motor car, because that's a little trickier with the drive in there, but that'll come sooner or later. And as cool as those early Metroliner models were, the drive in them was undeniably dreadful. It was a solid cast metal frame, it had cup gears, kind of a weak motor, and all kinds of friction in the drive, and I have yet to come across one yet that runs properly. In fact, the early set that I had when I was a kid never ran at all, which was a great disappointment, but I've always loved the look of them, and I'm hoping to get a set with an original drive that works well. What I did here was use a Tomix retrofit drive. I think it was designed for a long Japanese passenger train or something, and I retrofitted it to one of the dummy car frames with some brass tubes for drive shafts and some things like that. I had Randy Gustafson, who is just a genius when it comes to small drives and reworking things to get them to run smoothly. He helped me fine-tune it. The zinc weight at the top is the only thing in here that's original equipment. The trucks, the motor itself, and all of the drive gearing is new, and it runs remarkably more smoothly than the original. The originals were notoriously loud. Let's give it a run and see how it does. Let's take a look at it with the lights on. I still haven't gotten to where I can get lighting in the motor car, but in the passenger cars, I use my magic wand with my Rapido, that's the Rapido Trains line easy peasy set. Those easy peasy lights look pretty sharp. Having grown up in Baltimore on the Northeast Corridor, one of the things you have to have if you're going to run electric locomotives is catenary. I've chosen to merely represent a catenary system. We're certainly not going to get into wiring in everything, mostly because I want my layout to be flexible enough that I don't have to be modeling a particular piece of geography. And what I've done is built some catenary poles following the Pennsylvania prototype, and I've installed them using magnets. They're simple evergreen styrene construction. I put some flexible magnets down on the bottom, and in order to keep them in position, I use a simple roofing nail. It's got a nice big wide flat head, and since I have a foam base, when I measure out the location where I want to put it, and I'll take and push the nail down in, and that leaves a nice little pad that the magnet can then adhere to. When the Pennsylvania Railroad built the catenary system back in the 1930s, the posts were about 100 feet apart, which, you know, for N-scale purposes is a bit much. You still want to be able to see the trains. So I've got mine spaced out more sporadically to where they at least make sense with my scenery. I need to add a couple of more, but the overall effect is good. And again, being able to just pop them off the magnets and put them away, it takes it back to being a steam railroad. Yes, the Virginian had their big E40s, and the Milwaukee Road had their little Joes, but really there's only one electric locomotive that matters. The magnificent and majestic GG1 of the Pennsylvania Railroad. Whether in Tuscan red, Brunswick green, silver, or Amtrak silver, or Penn Central black, or even Conrail blue, the GG1 soldiered on for decades. And in 1970, Arnold Rapido brought us this magnificent N-scale model. The Arnold Rapido GG1 is probably the benchmark for the early advancement into more of a scale model. Now, it still had concessions to the N-scale train set mentality, such as the disjointed pilots that swivel with the couplers, the big Rapido couplers, and those sorts of things. But the overall lines of the model are outstanding. The pantographs are just extremely well rendered. And one of the cool things about them was that they are actually functional pantographs. All you have to do is turn this screw from one side of the pad to the other, and that changes the collection point of current from the track and the wheels up to the pantograph. That's something that the modern Cato and Bachmann models that cost hundreds more don't do. So if you're interested in running off of a hot wire, you'd have to get the old Arnold Rapido. While those big GG1s were certainly the streamlined wonders that hauled the passenger trains up and down the Northeast Corridor, by the Penn Central era, they had also been pressed into freight service. Many of them were geared for freight service for the lower speeds and heavier tonnages. And as a kid, I remember being out in Southwest Baltimore, sitting at the grade crossing on Friday nights, watching those big G's pull the freight. And one of the reasons you saw more and more Gs in freight service was that Amtrak, after 1971, was trying desperately to find a replacement for the now close to 40-year-old locomotives. One of them was the E60. Introduced in 1974, the Bachmann models came about sometime in the early 1980s. The Bachmann E60 was basically one of their updated train set drives with the split frame and the white nylon gearing. Over the years, the white nylon gearing has proven to be kind of problematic. Is the way the wheels are designed, they press into the nylon gear, which often ended up with the gear splitting, which would result in a clicking sound, sometimes just outright jamming it up and seizing up the drive altogether. The motor in the drive is also kind of weak. It's a 3-pole open frame motor. Pete Wisniewski of Massachusetts and Petesky on the rail wire helped me by actually repairing the gears in the drive. You can't really see it here, and I don't want to take it all apart, but he actually put brass collars around the gear head itself, which brought the gear back together and made it so that it runs more smoothly. So the model that you see here is slightly improved. The other thing that I did in the original configuration, the light board in here just completely lights up the windscreen as well as the number boards and headlight, and I didn't want that effect, the fire in the cab effect, so I took out the light board and painted the interior of the glass black so that it doesn't show through quite so badly. What I really like about this model is the detail of the pantograph. For being a relatively inexpensive train set model, the pantographs are really quite well done. They are made out of metal. They're not specifically set up to be able to power the train. However, the way the light board is designed, the 2 screws that you see here are what hold the pantographs on, so it wouldn't be much of a stretch to take those and connect them to the printed circuit board and make it so that it is a hot pantograph. Being the big chunk of metal that it is, I use it to pull my Florida train with some sleepers and a dining car, which is pretty typical for the era that I modeled. It's also interesting to note that the Bachmann E60 is the only modern Amtrak locomotive, electric locomotive, that's been modeled and available in N-scale. So there you have it, another week of this old fool running his old school, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've got comments or questions, please post them below, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next time. Until then, happy high railing.